I think Shell has probably a lot of experience also, Shell Foundation, in this sector. But you've been doing it for about 10 years, Judith. Perhaps you can give us a little insight.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm going to stay sitting down if that's okay. Can you see me or would you rather I stood up? Should I stand up? Yeah. I'm going to have to move because I'm being blinded by a big bright light there. So first off, thank you very much for inviting me along. And now I've got a really tough gig to follow because I've got the academic expert explain how to do this brilliantly. In the Shell Foundation, we were established about 10, 11 years ago by the Shell Group, as the name would suggest. What I'd like to talk to you about briefly, so we can get to the interesting bit of the panel discussion, is a little bit about our approach to tackling development challenges, because that really kind of gives you an idea of why we look at things the way we do. Some of what we found works on the ground and where we found the real challenges lie, and what we're looking for in the social entrepreneurs that we support. So, as a foundation, we have been set up as an independent charity, so while we have a link back to the Shell Group, and we very much look to draw all the expertise we can from a big corporation, I mean, like, well, we testify from IBM, there's lots of brains and stuff in these big organisations that we want to draw on. We have a fairly independent remit to go and tackle development challenges. We're not doing this for the purpose of the larger corporate's business. And I guess the types of development issues we challenge, we work on, are broadly related to the challenges of energy and poverty. But we have quite a wide spectrum of issues we tackle. The main thing is we try and take a business-based approach. So we're really looking to find how you can create positive development impact by bringing the skills and resources and the approaches of business thinking to those challenges, rather than taking a more traditional, probably old-fashioned NGO approach. And the other aim we really have is, if we're going to tackle something, I mean, development challenges around the world, the impact is, well, the scale of the challenge is huge, therefore we're looking to create impacts that are somewhat commensurate with the scale of the problem. So we're not looking to have a small local impact. We're not looking to solve a problem in a very limited geography or in a limited way. We're actually looking for models that can be scaled up to large impact, either through an organisation or a model that can organically do that, or through something that can be replicated, and then actually to foster that replication, not just to sit back and think it will take care of itself. So I guess our big mantra is scale, and the way we think it's best to tackle that is by bringing a business-based approach. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'll get into a couple of specific examples, but everything we do, we work through partners on the ground. We work through entrepreneurs. Sometimes they're for-profit organisations, sometimes not-for-profit organisations, and I can explain the reason why there. But we're essentially providing funding support, but also we're providing a lot of business capacity building, hand-holding, strategic support along the way. But like I said, everything is about developing those organisations on the ground and developing some of them so they can achieve results at scale and be there for the long term, not to fall over after 5-10 years. So what we found is, in our early days, we still came at the problem thinking, we really want to bring all this expertise, but how do we go and find these social entrepreneurs? How do we go and find these problem solvers? And we didn't know how we would do that, and we probably took a rather old-fashioned approach of putting requests out for proposals, soliciting ideas, and we really found that that wasn't massively successful. You tend to draw in a large number of not very high-quality proposals, and it tends to be a lot of the same old thinking, and we found that we've really had to turn our way of finding entrepreneurs around and be much more engaged in the spaces and in the questions we want to tackle. And we've got to look for certain characteristics. And if you're looking for entrepreneurs who are going to change the way you can tackle a development challenge and change the scale of impact you can have, you need to look for people who aren't thinking the same way everybody always has done. And particularly that's around the business models, I would say. our experience is that it hasn't been typically for us around the next clever technology or the next widget. Of course, the technology is important in addressing the right challenge. Like Christian was saying, you need to understand why, what are you trying to do, what is the problem, and how do you tackle that. But it's really about finding the right people who are aligned with us on that vision of scale, that they actually want to develop something that can go to a large scale, and that they have the capacity to be able to take it there. And it takes a long kind of dance with people to figure out if they're the right person, if they can build the right organisation. So then our approach with them is that we select a small number and we work with them really over a long time, and we provide a lot of support and really long-term funding. And I think it does mark us out as quite different to a lot of other foundations in the way we interact with our entrepreneurs. So if I give you a couple of examples of the types of entrepreneurs we've worked with and what they've achieved and the challenges they faced. One would be an organisation which actually sprang out of an R&D unit of an American university. It's an organisation called EnviroFit that builds clean cook stoves for the developed world. So air pollution from people cooking over open stoves is an issue which affects something like 4 billion people worldwide, and there's 190 million deaths a year. It's a really substantial issue. And there are a lot of people who've tried to tackle that, particularly with stove giveaway programs and so on. And we had a few kicks at this, and we eventually settled on EnviroFit as an organisation that we could work with. They've certainly done some very clever work in terms of being able to develop fit-for-purpose, lightweight, durable, low-cost products. But the real challenges with that organisation have been, how do you get the product to the market? How do you get it at scale? We've been working with them now, I think, for about 7 years. And in that time, we have tackled issues as wide as consumer awareness. How do you make bottom of the pyramid communities aware of the impact, aware of the health issues, and also the economic impact? So if women don't have to go and fetch wood daily, if they don't have to buy fuel, they can buy less fuel through more efficient stoves, they get a lot of time back, they get a lot of money back. It's not just the indoor air pollution issue. There's been an issue around affordability of these things, about microfinance and credit to the consumer, but also all the way up the value chain in distributors. There's been an issue of distribution networks don't exist in a lot of these communities that aren't the shop on the corner. There's been an issue, or we've worked with them on, of securing carbon finance, so you can bring that, you can make the stoves more affordable. There's been many, many facets of this problem, which has taken 7 years of hard work to get to the bottom of. And they've now sold 350,000 stoves. They're in India, they're in about half a dozen different countries in Africa, they're in Honduras, spreading to the rest of Latin America. And they have a sales target, I believe, of 2 million stoves within the next 2 to 3 years. So this is something that's really gone from very small to very large, to something that will essentially become a global organisation. A second example would be another of our programs relates to access to energy. So again, huge amount of people in the world do not have access to grid electricity, and it has all the sorts of impacts we talked about earlier in terms of lighting, access to education, access to income from having a small business. If you don't have light, if you don't have power, it's very difficult to get yourself into that value chain. We work with a biomass to power producer in India, again in one of the poorest Indian states. They gasify rice husks and turn those into power. And it started from an entrepreneur with that as a clever idea, with one plant in one village in Bihar. We've worked with them again over a number of years as their first funder to take them to a franchise model where they've now got 80 plants, and now they've achieved Series A funding with a number of commercial funders, and they're taking this to a much more substantial scale. And they have, they're called Husk Power. Husk Power have a Husk Power University now to train their next entrepreneurs, their next plant operators, and they're now looking to scaling this across much more substantial areas of India and taking it into Africa. But again, it's been very persistent, diligent support, providing lots of expertise, and being a funder who's been prepared to be there for 5, 10 years, not a couple of years, and not expecting results tomorrow. So those have been our learnings, but I would very much agree with what Christian was saying. First off, we always start with what's the market failure. Why isn't this problem being addressed? We all know these big problems are there, but why hasn't it effectively been addressed to start with? What's the market failure? How do you turn that around? And then you really need to look for the right combination of the person and building the capacity. And then realising these development issues haven't been solved because they're in countries with huge fragilities that don't have the business infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, the networks. So if you're going to create a successful entrepreneur, you actually have to take some responsibility for creating the networks, the distribution networks, examples of good financing, all that to back it up, because otherwise things will fall because the environment isn't there to support them. So, probably spoke far too long. Apologies to the rest of the panel.